Welcome back. This video is the 12th episode in my Complete History of Goodgame Empire series. Today, we'll be discussing 2023. As usual, I'll discuss all of the changes made by Goodgame Studios, as well as what it was like to play Empire in this year. 2023 was a year of mostly small changes, so instead of proceeding on a more or less chronological basis like I normally do, I'll instead divide this video into 3 parts. First, we'll talk about the changes Goodgame Studios made to Empire's event rewards, premium offers, and the balance of PvP. Next, we'll discuss some technical problems Empire encountered, and the changes Goodgame Studios made in response. While you might not believe me when I say this, almost everything that happened in 2023 can be fit into one of those 2 categories. There was barely any new content, hence why this episode is probably going to be among the shortest. Nevertheless, I have identified a few things that were new, and we'll talk about them in the last section of this video. Okay, let's get started. You'll recall that one of the biggest changes in the prior year was Goodgame Studios imposing a limit on the number of defenders that could participate in a battle in the courtyard. Any troops held by the player in excess of that limit were to be considered reserve units. They wouldn't fight, but they would automatically fill up any new courtyard space created by the first battle before a subsequent battle, and therefore they were still relevant. The balancing update had mostly caught players off guard, particularly because generals were introduced at the same time, further upsetting the status quo. Ruby buyers, in particular, were not happy. Goodgame Studios soon began making iterative balancing changes that effectively rolled back the courtyard unit limit. And so, 2023 began with an update that dramatically increased the power of Alliance troop support. Alliance defenders were now to be counted separately from the defending players' own units, subject to their own, quite generous cap. This change meant that the overall cap on defense units in the courtyard was once again in the hundreds of thousands of units, and attacking, as a free-to-play player, became about as difficult as it had ever been. Throughout the spring, Goodgame Studios improved the rewards associated with Empire's many events, particularly in ways that tightened Empire's monetization. The Kingdoms League Season Pass, a premium feature, would now reward more skeets. Generals' offerings and mystery boxes were added to the reward pools of Empire's 4 main invasion events: the Nomads, the Samurai, the Foreigners, and the Bloodcrows. A new tab at the Master Blacksmith appeared, where players could purchase rewards using excess skeets. Of course, the only players who were likely to have excess skeets at this stage were the spenders. Districts appeared in the Master Blacksmith shop for gold pieces. A little later in the year, Goodgame Studios changed the Beyond the Horizon rewards to include more premium relic build item crafting materials, as well as temporary build items that boosted honey production and reduced meat consumption. Goodgame Studios also buffed the prizes available at the Wheel of Unimaginable Affluence several times. And players would now see even better build items, decorations, and equipment regularly appearing in premium offers. May marked the introduction of Generation 2 relic equipment, with 4 effects per piece. Generation 2 equipment could be combined with Generation 1 equipment, but it was so much better that many players soon found themselves buying a lot of tickets for the Wheel of Unimaginable Affluence. In July, the more expensive tier of the individual player subscription received a new perk: the automatic skipping of Nomad and Samurai camp cooldowns. This was billed as a convenience feature, but it provides a substantial competitive advantage in those events, since players who have it can spend more of their time simply launching attacks. Much later in the year, around Black Friday, Goodgame Studios ran a special offer that multiplied rubies purchased by a whopping 600%. This was part of those purchase every day for a string of days type sales. Compare that to the old best offer of 200%, and you'll understand why many players bought in. All in all, Goodgame Studios certainly made thorough use of its new in-game store. In November, Goodgame Studios introduced premium effect decorations. Like normal decorations, these gave public order, but they also came with special bonuses, like increasing food storage capacity, tool production speed, or even troop strength. Arguably, the effect decorations were new content, but at least until the Imperial Patronage event was added in 2024, the only way that players were going to access them was by spending money on the game, either to purchase an offer or to place within the top 3 in the Outer Realms. Other late 2023 changes included a new Open All Offerings button at the General's Inn and a new bestseller shop where players could exchange or consolidate their time skips. So now that you have an idea of everything that was up for sale in the game, let's talk about some of the technical problems and changes. By my count, there were 5 worth discussing. First, in March, Goodgame Studios finally commented publicly about an exploit players have been using that involved virtual private networks, or VPNs. I think I've discussed this before on the channel, maybe even in this series, but a brief recap may be helpful. In general on the internet, you can use VPN software to anonymize your online activity. You've probably seen YouTubers being sponsored by VPNs. VPNs serve legitimate purposes like increasing privacy and circumventing censorship, but they can also be used for perhaps more objectionable purposes, like circumventing bans. And in Empire's case, players used VPNs to take advantage of Goodgame Studios' regional pricing differences. That's right, Goodgame Studios was selling rubies for cheaper in certain countries, like say India or Argentina, than it did in others, like the United States. And by using a VPN, players could buy rubies at those cheaper prices, irrespective of what game server their account was on. I really don't think I need to elaborate on the fairness issues that were raised. This problem had existed for a long time, since at least 2018, when I alluded to it in an interview that I did with Goodgame Studios. In March of the year that we're presently discussing, 2023, Goodgame Studios reminded players in an announcement on their Discord server that VPN use violated Empire's terms of service. Well, of course, Goodgame Studios didn't come right out and say why VPNs were banned or what players were using them for. Its decision to address the issue in any capacity may suggest that it felt more confident about its ability to track and prevent such behavior. Ultimately, I've heard reports that Goodgame Studios also addressed the issue by closing the gap in its regional pricing, which, if true, could be a bummer for players in certain countries. Another technical change was that Goodgame Studios introduced something in the Outer Realms that it referred to as Crossplay. This new version of the event was the first, and so far the only opportunity, for Empire desktop and mobile players to interact directly with one another in the same game environment. When you think about it, the Crossplay feature was a natural extension of the Outer Realms. The Outer Realms was a big deal to begin with, since it was the realization of Goodgame Studios' original vision for the War of the Realms, players from different servers competing against one another. Gameplay-wise, not too much was different, though Goodgame Studios was also coming out with a new all-in version of the Outer Realms that we'll discuss momentarily. The real significance of the crossplay, however, was that it was a technical achievement. At the time, Goodgame Studios even floated the possibility of merging Empire and Empire 4 Kingdoms, Empire's mobile counterpart, entirely. While that could be a great way to consolidate the community and make the servers more active, there are still plenty of barriers to such a merger, some technical and others rooted in game design. Empire 4 Kingdoms historically hasn't had all the same features as the desktop version of the game. Third, in terms of technical changes, Goodgame Studios announced that Empire's forums would be shutting down. While the closure of the forums did make some sense, because Discord is more interactive and the community hub is arguably a better place for guides, obviously the closure of the forums threatened to cause plenty of historical information about Empire in its heyday to be lost. As I said about a dozen videos ago, the announcement of the forum closure is partly what prompted this video series. And I'll just throw this in here, even though it's not really a technical change. Goodgame Studios was also launching the Empire Family Content Creator Program, which apparently is an opportunity for approved Empire YouTubers to get sneak peeks of upcoming content and occasionally some voucher codes for their audience. I'm not a part of it, but I've also never applied. Fourth, we spoke last time about how Goodgame Studios had made it possible to change the email address associated with one's Empire account from the settings menu. Well, Goodgame Studios newly announced that it would now be possible to change the email address even without access to the old one. At the same time, Goodgame Studios said that its customer support team would no longer help users recover stolen accounts. This was a big bummer for account security, and it's a difficult change to come up with a valid reason for. Perhaps customer support had had enough responding to certain types of tickets, or perhaps these changes were intended to discourage players from sharing passwords, something that has affected the fairness of PvP by making that practice riskier. Fifth, and finally, Goodgame Studios imposed a cap on the number of messages that players could send to others in the game. After some back and forth between Goodgame Studios and the community, the cap turned out to be 75 messages per day. The reason for this change was fairly straightforward. You might remember that it used to be more commonplace to receive spam messages in the game, usually advertising a bot or perhaps some competing game that was said to be an improved version of Goodgame Empire. Well, after years of this seemingly going unaddressed, Goodgame Studios finally cut back on the spam by imposing a message cap. Okay, let's wrap things up by talking about 2023's new content. Again, compared to the other years, this is going to be pretty short. In April, Goodgame Studios expanded the general system slightly, increasing the level cap to 100 and adding new generals' abilities. One added skill, available in Tier 5 for every general, provided an additional permanent attack wave. As a reminder, leveling up generals is bottlenecked by the General's Inn, which is a heavily monetized feature. Thus, while I'm sure that the average player was, even at the time, farther along than I am now, those who were to unlock the new content and abilities first were very likely to be the big spenders. June saw another change to the general system, the addition of Sasaki, Empire's second legendary general. My understanding is that Toril, the original legendary general, is regarded as slightly better, especially on the attack. The strength of some of these abilities, though, like reducing enemy power by 15% in the following 2 waves, activated every 3rd wave, can be a bit difficult to parse. Additionally, even now in 2024, I only have Sasaki at level 10, so I wouldn't really know how the two compare, and you can inform me in the comments if you think I'm mistaken. Around this same time, Goodgame Studios reduced the effect of having buildings in the castle be damaged or on fire. The penalty on production would be lower, and buildings would now be quicker and cheaper to repair. In light of players needing to move away from fire castellans, which were a relic, no pun intended, of the old equipment system, I think this change made some sense. In July, Goodgame Studios added new research at the Research Tower, this time unlocking higher craftable levels of premium food, honey, mead, and troop strength build items. In September, more build items were added, this time to boost the output of the refinery and the toolsmith. September also saw the introduction of new temporary alliance boosts that would reduce the cooldowns of samurai and daimyo castles. And in October, Goodgame Studios came out with the all-in version of the Outer Realms. It was based on the Heritage Hunter scoring system. As the name suggests, players would either go all-in by purchasing the single package on sale, or, I suppose, not go all-in and basically have no way to make progress in the event. The package was roughly twice the cost of the cheapest Ruby package, normally on sale, so I think Goodgame Studios' scheme behind this all-in iteration was to try to double the amount the average player would end up spending. Fellow Empire YouTuber EndXPlay made a great video about this, which I'll link to in the description, discussing how this version of the event was exactly as you'd expect, completely pay to win. The premium package gave players 600,000 troops, which was 600,000 more troops than you'd have as a free-to-play user. What's more, purchasing the offer essentially made one's castle undefeatable, even by other spenders. This is because the player's account would still be fairly low level, meaning that only small attacks could be sent against it. Meanwhile, the player would have 300,000 defenders to last for an event that was only a few days long. So, even for spending players, the only thing to do in the event was to farm the free-to-play users, which was about as fun as attacking robber barons. Last, and quite arguably least, in December, Goodgame Studios added something that it called PvE Generals, but which was actually just some new artwork that would appear on the attack setup screen when the player went to attack an event camp. While the new artwork was cool, I suppose, there was no change to gameplay. Goodgame Studios announced that development on the third legendary general it had been working on was to be paused, which, about a year later, is starting to look more like abandoned. And that is 2023. Please be sure to tune in to the next episode, which of course will cover 2024. As a heads up, although it will still be an episode of the complete history of Goodgame Empire, it might feel a little different because we'll finally be talking about the current state of the game. I plan to make the video as accessible as possible for viewers who haven't been watching this entire series and who just want to know whether the game is worth playing now. Afterward, in a separate epilogue-type episode, I'll wrap things up on this whole series and tell you what I think of the story of this once amazing game that we all played and enjoyed. So, that means there are actually 2 more videos after this one. Okay, that's it. You can go now. I release you. Bye-bye.